Every town has some things about it that certain residents just don't like, and I have my own opinions about Norman, Oklahoma. So let me share my list with you of the 10 things that I hate about living in Norman, Oklahoma. So you probably saw my 10 things I hate about living in Oklahoma video. Some people really came at me for that, thinking I was ragging on our state, and like I was, yeah, absolutely, because there's gonna be things that you hate about the state that you're living in, right? There's always things about the towns and the states that you live in that you hate. Most people just don't put them on YouTube, and I do. So here we go. I'm Marcie Billen, and I'm a real estate agent in Oklahoma. I do live in Norman, and me and my husband work together as a team, and you're gonna see him a little bit later on in this video. His name is Handsome. So for this video, I'm gonna start with a real head scratcher for you. I hate OU. Now, I don't hate OU. I actually graduated from OU, the University of Oklahoma. I had a really great time going to school there. It's a fantastic school and it brings so much to our community. But you know what I'm gonna say. I'm gonna say traffic. So the campus itself, it starts at Boyd Street in Norman and goes all the way down to Highway 9, and it stretches between about Classens and Chautauqua, right? So that's kind of the boundaries of the University of Oklahoma. But most of the actual university sits north of campus of Lindsay. Side note, it's totally possible you're gonna see my cat in the background of this video. She's a cat, this is how it works. So like I said, gonna talk about traffic. So the university is big, right? And whenever everyone comes to town to go to university, so during the school year, August to May, we're talking around 20,000 people that roll into town. So Norman's a town of 125,000 people. So it's a lot. It's a lot of people. So the traffic during the school year can get a little hectic. We have a lot of students that come from Texas. And if you're a Texas driver, you know what I mean. And then there's the game day traffic. People often talk to me about game day traffic, and there's about 7 game days. I think it's exactly 7. I'm not a football person. There's about 7 game days for football per year. And does the traffic suck on those days? Yeah, it really sucks. But it's really not very many days. So the main part of my annoyance with OU traffic is actually just the normal traffic day to day, right? And then OU also buys up a lot of property around the University of Oklahoma. So they're buying a lot of what we would call affordable housing up, which brings me to point number 2, which is the lack of affordable housing in Norman. So let's talk about this, the lack of affordable housing. So what is affordable housing? Well, it's housing that, this is what the government says it is, housing that will only cost you 30% of your income. The average Oklahoman makes $29,873 per year. That's a single person, and that's for Oklahoma. So for Norman, it is gonna be a little bit higher. So keep that in your brain. If the average Oklahoman is making $29,873 per year, then the amount that they should be paying on their mortgage or their rent is around $740-ish a month. So the average rent in Norman right now is actually $1,011 per month. Like I said, I don't have the numbers for what a single person would make in Norman, Oklahoma, that average. I just have it for Oklahoma. But I do have the average for a 2-income household for Norman itself. And that is a little over $58,000 per year. And this is pre-panorama numbers. Like, I don't have 2021 numbers on me because there really weren't any to be found. So in terms of purchasing a house, the average home prices today in Norman are a little over $223,000 for a house. So using some quick mortgage calculation, that would mean that your mortgage payment per month on a $223,000 house would be around $1,700 a month. So that's with putting 10% down with a conventional loan. So if we do the quick numbers for what 30% of that $58,000 number would be, then the person should be paying around $1,400 per month for housing and not $1,700 per month for housing. Norman is more affordable than most places, but we are lacking a little bit in that affordability range.
When people think of Oklahoma, they think about the Great Plains of Oklahoma, the farmland and the farming community, Thunder basketball, and especially OU football. We definitely have a lot of transplants coming to Oklahoma right now. One of the big things for them is shopping. And one of the things that they're familiar with is Trader Joe's. So Trader Joe's is considered to be on the north side of Oklahoma City. So what does that mean? It means as a Southsider like me, living in Norman, I have to drive 30 minutes just to make it to Trader Joe's. For the OKC, the north side is considered Penn Square Mall, Trader Joe's area, Edmond, Memorial area. For some reason, the north side of Oklahoma City is maybe more similar in their shopping compared to someone that would be living in California. In OKC, we talk about South Side, we're typically talking about either 240 and below or just right around that area. Definitely in the North Oklahoma City area is what people would consider the higher shopping or the more shopping that they are accustomed to coming from a different market. So that's what leads us to number 4. Me living in Norman, we have a lot of restaurants that are mainly chain-based, which is not necessarily bad, but there's definitely more of a chain going on in this area right now. We have some great restaurants in Norman, and we go to them all the time. But definitely the food scene is better, in my opinion, a little bit better in Oklahoma City area or the north side.
Number 5. Norman's a sprawling town, and it can get so annoying. So Norman is around 190 square miles. Now to give you a little comparison here, San Francisco is a little over 46 square miles big, and Washington, D.C. is a little over 68 square miles. So Norman is 190 square miles, almost 4 times bigger than San Francisco. So this creates a little problem for us for public transportation. Now, Norman has really great public transportation when it comes to comparing Norman to other towns in Oklahoma, but it has a very limited schedule. It's hard to walk from bus stop to bus stop. And in the summer, I know they really cut it down, and most of the schedule is centered around the University of Oklahoma, which is great for students. Not so great for the rest of the town and the people who need that public transportation. Number 6 is one-way streets. So Norman's set up on a grid, which makes it really easy to find things, really easy to understand where the streets are, yada yada. It's great. And Norman has a couple of one-way streets, and that's Main Street and Gray Street. So downtown Norman is one-way streets. So Main Street is one way going east, and Gray Street is one way going west. I personally think this is ridiculous. The streets are huge. There is plenty of room to make them two-way streets. And if we did that, we'd have room for bike lanes on Main Street and Gray Street, and we don't have that right now. And we'd also have room for restaurants and shops to do more things on the sidewalks and to rope off some sections of the street for dining, curbside dining, and things like that. I do have reasons for thinking this. So one of the authors I really love is Jeff Speck, and he wrote a few books, but one of his newest ones is Walkable City Rules. And in this book, he outlines that one-way streets really don't help businesses in downtown areas. And the reasons for this are the rate of travel of these cars in the streets and the fact that the drivers are only looking on one side of the street, right? They can't look at both sides of the street at the same time. So he's saying that these businesses would actually flourish having a two-way street because it helps people really know that they're there and have the ability to stop instead of driving all the way around the block. You should check out that book. It's really a good one. I told you earlier that Norman is a sprawling city, that it's 190 square miles total. So to drive across town, it takes a minute. So for me to drive from my house in North Norman, which is very central, all the way down to the lake is gonna take at least 20 minutes. Same goes like if you office in Northwest Norman, which I do a lot of the time. And then if you wanna drive to South Norman, which is kind of a booming part of our city, a lot of new builds, then it takes about 20 minutes. And it might take more with rush hour traffic. So 20 minutes may not sound like a lot to you, but if you're like dropping off your kid and it takes 20 minutes, or dropping off your pet and it takes 20 minutes, all this stuff really adds up. And one of the reasons for Norman's sprawlingness is that we don't really build up in Norman. Kind of the max of each business or house or whatever is 2 stories. If we built further up, then we could probably have a little less sprawl, but you know, I don't make the rules. Along with this conundrum of having this sprawling city is my number 8, which is the lack of bike lanes and protected sidewalks. The city has invested pretty heavily in bike lanes, and so we do have them. However, they're only protected by the line, meaning that there's only a line between the biker, or the cyclist, I guess, and the car next to them, which is quite dangerous. And then as far as sidewalks, like Norman does have a good amount of sidewalks. However, they're not protected either. And a lot of them don't have trees, which makes it really hard to walk on them. And they could be really long, and you know, our weather is not the greatest sometimes. My last 2 are gonna be about weather, and number 9 is flash flooding. So flash flooding and having the storm water all over the streets is a common issue here in Norman. So what happens is that it'll rain really hard and fast, typically during the months of May and June, and the streets will flood because the drainage system is overwhelmed with the water. So there are several streets that will flood, and you definitely don't want to get caught in it. You want to be aware that this is happening because, you know, even in 3 inches of water, you can drown in these types of floods. So be really careful. These things don't last very long. The water doesn't sit on the streets for very long at all. It's just not something you want to get caught in. So number 10, my last one is tornadoes. You guys are probably waiting for me to say this. So in Norman, we do of course get tornadic activity. Most of the time it happens in the month of May. We do have tornado sirens. Tornadoes typically happen in the late afternoon, which means that everyone sits out, you know, in front of their TV and watches whatever dramatic weatherman they can at that moment. And that weatherman will make a storyline for you of the storms that are traveling across the Oklahoma City metro at that time.
Is way down on this
Tornado
thing.
warning is coming.
Okay, so the hook on this is way down. All right, so News 9, let's do this here. Tornado warning.
We're just now getting that line. That's going to be impacting us here at home, crossing the state line from Oklahoma into Arkansas by about sunset. We're going to talk about a detailed timing.
We've got opposing cloud features. On the west side, it's wrapping to the south. On the north side, on the east side, it's wrapping to the north.
So since 1945, only 8 people have died in tornadoes in Norman. If you want some more information about Norman, Oklahoma, I have a free download that's all about relocating to Norman. You can find it in the description below. I would also suggest watching one of these 2 videos next.